Hi there and hello, my name is Connor. 今日の動画では井上園子のほころびについて話してます。So I'm just going to assume that you don't know who Sonoko Inoue is, and probably that's because she has only, I think, 6,000 listeners on Spotify, which is not a lot. And I think that's primarily because she's only been active since, I believe, 2022. And this album came out in September 2024, so she's still extremely new. So with that said, here's the rundown. Sonoko Inoue is a singer, songwriter, and guitarist from Japan. I read that she's from the Shonan area, but I don't know exactly where, and I think maybe that's on purpose. Regardless, I am going to be talking a lot about her guitar work and her singing and her songwriting in this video because she is a one-person act. There is no one else. It is just her and her guitar and I guess her voice. And with using those two tools, she is primarily in the genres of, I would say, blues, country, twee, and also, of course, folk. And with that said, I think if you like other female-led folk rock acts such as Kaneko Ayano, Ululu, or maybe even Sakoto Shibata, you would also probably like a lot of what's happening on this album too. And I say that because I know I do. So in case you're not aware, something I'm doing this week is I am having a special review week called Hokorobi Week. And that is because this is the second video of this week in which I am covering an album titled Hokorobi. My previous video was on an album with the same title, except it was from an artist named Beachside Talks. And in that video, I actually said what the score was right at the beginning because I liked it so much. And I'd like to do something similar for this video too. So I'm just gonna say the score up front, and then you have to stay and watch this whole video. And you can't click away, please. So without further ado, I'm going to rate this album a 10 out of 10. And you know how much I like this album? I have props. Bah, bah. Yeah, so I got this in Japan last month in person, and I was like, oh, I like this album so much. I should probably own it on CD, blah, 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 blah. But then I saw that her label has the vinyl on their Bandcamp, and I said, well, if I have to, and I did have to. So I bought it, and much like I said in my previous video, I think you should buy this too, which I'll be talking a lot about a lot later, because I think this is going to be another longish one, if the word count for my notes is anything to go off of. I think this is a real landmark album for the folk rock genre, especially in modern times where, you know, I feel like folk is kind of overplayed and there's not a lot of younger artists that are really into it. I feel like if you do like folk music, you probably, you know, aren't really seeking out Japanese folk specifically, but man, I feel like this thing really crosses genres and generations, and I think that's maybe one of the things I like most about it as well. However, for this video, I want to structure it in a way that I'm going to talk about three main things in three main sections, and that is going to include her singing, her guitar work, and also her songwriting too. So with that said, let's get started with talking about how good of a singer she is. Now, I'm sure you can imagine that I think she's a really good singer because, well, I rated this album a 10, and considering it's just her voice and her guitar, it's got to be pretty good, right? Well, you're right. You're not wrong. You're right. I think she is such a fantastic singer, especially for this genre in particular. She just gets it. I think I can't really describe that without playing the music, but I can't play the music without maybe getting like a copyright strike. So please listen to this album. It's okay if you don't buy this album, but you do have to listen to it. That is your assigned listening for the week, is you have to listen to this album and the previous one. So it's my opinion that if I rate something a 10, you need to listen to it. It is like mandatory listening for you as a music listener, but more importantly, as a human. And so with that said, this is definitely one of those. Okay, so the first song I want to talk about is the one called Jun o Kazoete, which means count to 10. I love a lot about this song. However, I'm kind of saving that for the songwriting section. So I'm not going to be talking about the songwriting right this second. But as far as the singing goes, I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think that the pitch that Sonoko sings in is a perfect match for the instrumental here. And like I said, I just love her voice for these genres as well. There is so much going on with her voice here, in particular on this song too. For instance, her voice moves up and down the musical scale like smoothly, pristinely. And another thing I should point out too is that she sings with a lot of passion and emotion. And that is very obvious here on this song too. There is another song called Manga no Yo Na, which means like manga or like a manga. And it is kind of the opposite of that previous one I just mentioned. Here, the instrumental is very slow, and I also find that her voice matches that pace too. On this one, she holds her notes out much longer than other songs across this whole album. In spite of that additional difficulty though, I do find that she manages to stay on note pretty much perfectly as she holds out these very long notes, just like Natsuko Miyamoto from the band Mass of the Fermenting Dregs, which I absolutely love because she is such a fantastic singer. On this song too, she also sings in a somewhat lower tone of voice, but will then just immediately jump up or jump even lower just at a moment's notice. And so because of that, when I listen to this song in particular, I am just taken aback at just how fantastic of a singer she is. And this aspect of her singing style also just kept me really engrossed in the music as I was listening to this very long album too. I think it's like just a little over an hour. I want to say it's like an hour 6, but I really don't think it feels like it though. One other song I want to talk about is the one called Oishi Kurashi, which means sweet life, and it just has this beautiful outro that I just need to talk about. I love her singing across this entire song, but in the later half, she is kind of half singing, half humming, and half almost like not quite scatting, not quite yodeling, but she's doing some very interesting vocal inflections here, and it just sounds so fantastic. It's so smooth. It is a really fantastic display of her singing abilities, and I'm so happy it's here, and I'm so happy that she was able to record this presumably in one take and live, because that's exactly what it sounds like. And then also as one song ends and then another starts, it seems pretty seamless, and you can also hear quite a bit of background noise too. So I feel like this is all in more or less one take, though maybe not all like at the same time sequentially. I can't really find any evidence to prove or disprove that, but that's just kind of what it sounds like to me. And also one last thing to mention for this song too is that I love the twangy guitar riff on this thing. Oh, it is so great. Oh, it jangles so well. Oh, it is so good. And also too, this is the second song on the album, if you would prefer to just find it that way. Another absolutely fantastic song on this album is called Kirei Oji-san, which means beautiful old man. And I'm going to talk about this one a little bit later too. Just know that this song is titled this way in a very snarky way. As a matter of fact, this song is more of like a conversation or a confrontation. And so for that reason, she actually isn't quite singing. It's more like she's doing some spoken word singing, rapping here. Her vocals are just absolutely all over the place, and for very good reason too, which like I said, I'll talk a little more about later on. But this is just such a tour de force of a song, I feel like, that it is probably the highlight of the whole album for me. One other thing to note, my favorite album of all time is the album 3 by the band Trico, and that's primarily because of Ikkyu Nakajima's just absolutely beautiful singing on there, and just the way she hits notes and sustains them, and it's just awesome. And you know what? Sonoko does this exact same thing on this album too, which is of course why I'm so enamored by this whole album and just everything happening here. Her vocal range is insane, and these inflections that she is constantly imposing on the track too is just wild and so cool to actually experience too. I just love her voice here. But unfortunately, she doesn't have a lot of other music to actually check out because she is such a new artist. But man, when those new singles come out, or an EP, or that second album, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm probably gonna pre-order it because I just know the level of quality that her music has. And of course, that's not solely because of her voice, that's because of her skills on the guitar as well, which I'd like to talk about now. How good was that segue, right? Okay, so stylistically, Sonoko's guitar work is just all over the place on this album in the best way possible. There are these very belabored sounding swells of hearty sound. There are also these very little trickles of light plucking just everywhere in the background, or sometimes even in the forefront too. And then there are these also like absolutely huge cascading flourishes that seem to fill up the whole recording room too, that are just awesome and beautiful. I just don't understand how one person makes this much noise. It is beautiful. Now, if I've edited this well, you should be seeing a list of numbers going either up or down the screen. I'm not quite sure which way I want it yet. What these are timestamps of every time I was listening to each of the songs and I said, wow, this guitar rocks here. This was every single time. It was a lot. It was frequent. It was all the time. And I tried not to go for repeat like riffs or melodies. I tried really hard, but sometimes it just hit different on that second or third or fourth go around that I just had to include it on this list too. But pretty much like 99% of everything here is just one single instance of a certain riff or melody. And I figured like, yeah, I could, play the music, but again, I don't want a copyright strike. So I kind of figured that this is the next best thing, I guess, to show you visually every time I said, oh, this sounds really good. Yeah, that's kind of it for the guitar section. So let's just go right into songwriting. So for starters, let's go back to that very first song I talked about called Jun o Kazoete, which again means count to 10. So for this one, I would like to talk about one of the verses and also one of the choruses too, because I think they are very, very well written. And so with that said, the song starts with the following. I always have that same little dream, that dream where I'm walking along the riverside with you. We plan to meet at the station. I count to 10 and keep repeating it. I'm always being stood up. It's like any other night, any other night. I'm always being stood up. And then she says that a second time. I always have that same little dream, that dream where I'm walking along the beach with you. You who never gave me even a single postcard. I'm always being stood up. This isn't a night like any other. A night like any other. I'm always being stood up. This isn't a night like any other. A night like any other. So I wanted to highlight that because I really like the way in which Sonoko is able to convey her feelings of getting fed up with a relationship. I really like the writing of this song because I just find that she is able to talk about this very happy relationship and just how like sweet and lovey-dovey it is. And then she shows how that sort of affection then turns into a very bitter resentment towards the end. And I think the way that she shows and then writes that is just so like slick and natural and just overall makes sense without her having to really explain it. So I wanted to mention that part because I find that a lot of her work is actually like this, because I feel like based off of her appearance, she kind of seems like, oh, she's so small and sweet and she seems so kind. She also seems to actually have a very fiery kind of personality, whereas you might think that her music is very positive and also kind of happy-go-lucky. Not a lot of her music actually leans that way. For example, the following song in the tracklist called Kirei Oji-san has a story that is basically about a music old head being very, very nitpicky about the kind of music that she makes. And so in turn, she basically responds with like, oh, I don't know, man, I'm just kind of doing me. And so then after that, as the old man gets more and more combative, she kind of just responds with a very terse "tame ga yare yo," which if you contextually translate into English, basically means then write something better yourself, you asshole. Goddamn. And while yes, it's not only funny, it's also a fantastic way to address critics, I feel like. So with that out of the way, let's talk about another song. This one is actually the first song on the album, and it is titled San Yofun no Uta, which kind of translates to 3 or 4 minute song. So anyway, on this song, I find that Sonoko really dives deep into her insecurities, but also shows that she is using her music to actually strengthen her resolve as well. On this one, she sings, I can fight on my own without any top-of-the-line weapons. I've never thought to want that kind of stuff. I've never thought to want that kind of stuff. I'm not someone who needs to rely on that kind of stuff. I'm not a cowardly person like that. I love that so much, but I just wanted to also interject here too that this next verse is really hard to translate, and so I'm not super positive on this one, but I think I've done a pretty good job translating this very deliberately intense verse here. I'm always concealing a judgmental space in my heart. Since when has the heart from my past gone beyond that sunrise that was capable of opening my heart all of those times? Since when has my heart from my past had this rusty knife placed in it? At what point did I get used to the separation? At what point did it become common for me to be alone? At what point did I start to like the isolation? Until just now, I hated being alone. In 4 minutes, I'll be free. In that 3rd minute, I'll surely want to sing, because I'll be able to decide when I've sobered up. Because I'll decide when I've sobered up. So I feel like this song really speaks for itself. However, one thing I do want to mention is the opening of this song. It's fairly slow paced and is also led with a very intricate guitar melody from Sonoko that really sets up the album well, in my opinion. I also really like the repetition of the line Yofukan de jiyu ni naru, which again means in 4 minutes I'll be free, as I find that it really sets the stage for Sonoko to be able to freely talk about what she wants across this song and the album at large. And of course, the way she's able to do this is also through singing, go figure. And yeah, I just really like this sentiment, and I also think that it's a very cool and also very impressive one to actually start the album off with too. The last song I want to talk about is called Cowboy no Kuchikuse, which translates to a cowboy's catchphrase. So anyway, here's how the song starts off. My dad has a catchphrase. If you only take a shower, you'll catch a cold again. My mom has a catchphrase. Put everything back after you use it. Their dearest daughter has a catchphrase. You look like you've gained a little weight recently. The cowboy has a catchphrase. Keep on believing. Keep on believing. That's the cowboy's catchphrase. That's the cowboy's catchphrase. Even now, the cowboy singing voice flows through my chest. Yodeleihu. So I thought the lyrics on this one were very notable because it just shows more of her personality. I think by now it should be obvious that Sonoko has a very tongue-in-cheek way in which she sings and also writes music. And I think that is really well shown in this song, especially the way that she talks about her sister. I just find that it's very funny, it's very cute, and in general, I think it just sounds very organic and natural too. And I also think that that's the real power of folk music too, and is why I'm so happy that she is now one of the emerging voices in the genre too. Yeah, I just love the way she writes songs, and in my opinion, she's a 10 out of 10 songwriter. How crazy is that, right? So in synopsis, I think this album is pretty great. It's not only because of the fantastic instrumentation, singing, and lyrics, I just think that Sonoko's ability to insert her personality into each of these songs really makes it come alive. And from the way that she writes her songs, I think you can tell that she has a very intuitive and also realistic view of the world around her, which of course really helps the songs just feel much more personal and lifelike. I absolutely love her choice for her music just to be her vocals and guitar. There's this very inherent fragility with this kind of arrangement, but I also think that there's a certain degree of strength to perform in this manner as well. And in turn, I think that speaks to her character and her resolve too, I think. And in that way, she actually reminds me a lot of Johnny Cash for that reason. And I think that's especially because of the way in which she sings and writes her songs. Her songs involve very intimate feelings about stories and happenings directly from her own life. And so because of that, her country, blues, and folk-tinged, very complex guitar melodies also harken back to a very American flavor of those genres as well. Like seriously, you are going to have to very strongly convince me that Johnny Cash is not possessing her on the song Oishi Kurashi. And then again, songs like 3 or 4 minutes really remind me of ones by Johnny Cash like 25 Minutes to Go. Sometimes it just seems so spot on, I think. And then if that's not enough, that final song Cowboy's catchphrase also seems exactly like something he would probably write too. One other thing I'd like to mention too is the mixing on this album. Oh my god. It just sounds like she is playing right in front of you. And it's for that reason too that I think this album cover is extremely effective, because I just think it really establishes the image of like what you should be seeing in your head when you are listening to this. I think that is so fantastic. I feel like I can just close my eyes and listen to the music and I am there in that image. And I think that also helps because I'm like 99% sure that that is the actual studio in which she recorded this album, because I've actually seen this exact room on the like Twitter profile images of other bands as they're recording their music. So I have to assume this is where this album was recorded as well. And yeah, just another reason why I think this is a 10 out of 10 album, really. Okay, and with that, I think I've pretty much covered everything I want to. There is just really nothing I don't love about this album, and I really hope that this video demonstrates why. Now, I will admit, this album is a little hard to get into if you're not really a folk head, but I think listening to this album on a walk or maybe on a bike ride away from distractions is really the optimal way to listen to it. Hell, I mean, like, this is such a country album, you could probably listen to it while doing some farm work, I suppose. I think this album really exists in a space where I think older music fans and also younger ones will both really like it. And I think that's because it very much harkens back to country and folk music from the 60s and 70s in America. In general, I think Sonoko's music just really injects a modern youth sort of sensibility to the genre as well, which of course is going to connect with younger listeners such as myself. But at the same time, I still think it would be pretty fascinating for older audiences as well, just to kind of see like where that genre is in the year 2025. And so with that said, what do I think you should do? I think you should buy this album. I think you should definitely buy it. Like I said, I bought the CD in Japan, but I was able to get the vinyl purchased from the label's Bandcamp page, which I will have a link to in the description. It's not too expensive. I think you should hopefully be able to swing it, but with the tariffs and junk, I don't know. And on top of that too, if you do purchase it from Bandcamp, you are going to get the high quality download of the album too, which just really makes it sound like you're there. But yes, that is it. That's all I had to cover. And thank you so much for watching. I think you should check out this album. Obviously, it's a 10 out of 10, and I am only mad that I had not reviewed it sooner, but I was waiting for the vinyl, so sorry. And just in case you haven't watched it yet, you should watch part 1 of Hokorobi Week, which I will have a link to probably right here. It is another fantastic album, and I think another fantastic video, if I do say so myself. So you should check it out. But if you don't, and if this is the only time you watch me for today, thank you so much for watching, and have a good rest of your day, and see you in the next one. Bye. Bye-bye.